After you save your document in the latest version of Word 2013, if you want to be able to share it with others who have earlier versions of Word, like 2010, 2007, 2003, you may want to check it for compatibility issues before you send it off, because some of the features that are available in the latest version were not available in earlier versions. So when they get your document, some of the features that you use may not even show up there, and if it's important to you, they won't be able to see it, and so they won't get the information that you need that you're trying to purvey to them through the document. You can either clean it up or just say, okay, that's fine, let's send it off, and hopefully it's compatible enough that they get the basics of it. To go ahead and find out whether the document we have here is compatible with earlier versions of Word, you can do it one of two ways. One way is to come up here and click on the File tab, go Backstage, Info is selected by default, come down here and click on Check for Issues, and go down to Check for Features Not Supported by Earlier Versions of Word, i.e. Check for Compatibility. Click on it. If there are any issues, you get a summary of it right here. Now, what is it checking for? Go ahead and click on the version drop-down arrow, and you can see that all of them are checked. So it's checking in all the previous versions of Microsoft Word, and right now, the way that the document is, there's no issues. Let me click OK. Of course, I expected that because we only typed in text, and any version of Word should be able to accept simple text. But like I said, if we go ahead and insert a feature that wasn't available in an earlier version, then we're going to find some issues. So let's go ahead and create an issue so I can give you an example here of what I'm talking about. My cursor's at the end of the paragraph here. Let me hit enter so I can go down to the next line so I can insert an object, because this object I'm going to insert is not available or compatible with the earlier versions of Word, more specifically 97 through 2003. So to insert an object, let's come up here and click on the Insert tab, and go to the Illustrations group, and let's do Smart Art. We'll go over Smart Art in a later training video, but to make my point here, let's click on it and select something really fast, like in the Hierarchy group. Let's do the Organization chart. You can get a preview of it over here to the right. Like for your organization, who's the president, and then below them, the assistant to them, VPs, and so on. Let's go ahead and click OK. And it says you can add your text by clicking in the rectangle and typing in your text, like my name. And notice when I start typing, it automatically resizes the font to fit within the box. Hit enter. And there you go. Just go ahead and fill in the rest of the rectangles and delete them or add more. And you can learn more about that in a later training video. But the point that I'm getting at here is that when we save this and send it off to somebody who has the earliest version of Word, it's not going to be compatible. And that compatibility could be one of a couple of things. Either they won't be able to see the organization chart at all, or they'll be able to see it, but they won't be able to edit it like we can in the latest version of Word. It'll just be like a picture. So to find out if there's any issues and with what versions, let's go back up here, click on the File tab, Info by default, come down, Check for Issues, and go to Check Compatibility, and there we go. The Smart Art graphics will be converted into a single object that can't be edited in previous versions of Word. What versions? Well, click on the drop-down arrow, do some deductive reasoning here. The earliest version is probably where it's going to have the biggest problem. To me, that would just make sense. I just don't know if 2007 or 2010 it has issues with it. So let's uncheck 97 through 2003, and if it disappears, then it only had an issue with the earliest versions of Word and not 2007 or 2010. So if I uncheck that, okay. So it's fine in 2007 and in 2010. Let me check that to bring it back up so you can see why I want to go from the oldest to the newest instead of going from the latest here, 2010, because it's still showing, and I'm like, well, let me uncheck now. 2007 is still there. Okay, I guess it's 97 through 2003. I mean, that's too many clicks. So in any case, we can go back and check them all and just know that the earliest version is going to be converted into an object where when they get the document, they won't be able to click inside of it to make the change to the president, say, no, you're fired, we got somebody else as our president, which would be horrifying because I want to be president. That's one way where you can go ahead and check for compatibility issues. Another way is that you can do a save as and save it to the earliest version of Word, so that way you get an idea of what they're going to be seeing when it's finally in that earlier version of Word and what they're able to do or not do. We read it here. It's going to be a single object. You won't be able to click inside of it to change the text and delete it. Let me go ahead and click on the outside. But before I show you how that's going to look and converting it to an earlier version, just keep in mind that if you don't like the non-compatibility between the latest and the earliest version, then you either want to go ahead and get rid of the org chart or select another way to build it by just inserting a bunch of shapes and creating it that way so the earlier versions can accept it. There's a couple of different ways you can go about doing this. In any case, it will accept it, it's just that they can't edit it. So let's go ahead and save it to an earlier version so we have an idea of what that person is going to be viewing when they get this document in the latest version of Word 2013, but trying to view it in an earlier version, the Word program, like let's say 97 or even 2000. So to convert it to the earlier version, come up here. Well, I've got the Save As on my Quick Access toolbar. I can click on that, opens up the Save As window. You can click on the File tab and go down to Save As. And when you open up the Save As window, we want to click on the Save As type and change it from the latest version with the extension .docx. X stands for Extensible Markup Language, which is a more stabler coding for the latest versions of Word, which includes 2007, 2010, and 2013. It's more stable, it's a smaller file format, so you can add more to it and not have as big a document than if you created in this earlier version that doesn't have the X. If you want to learn more about extensions, then I recommend that you watch my Windows training video on extensions. But in any case, you can see that there's an X missing here, and it's for Word 97 through 2003. So if you want to save it in that earlier version, select that, and we'll save it in our exercises folder on the desktop. It's already there, but if not, of course, you can scroll up over in the navigation pane, select the desktop, find a folder, double-click on it, and then click Save. And this is the other way to check for compatibility issues when you save it to an earlier version, more specifically the version of 97 through 2003. Because pretty much 2007 and 2010, those two earlier versions are more compatible than 97 through 2003. So let's go ahead and say we want to continue. We're okay with this. Once you do that, go ahead and select it, and you see how it selects the entire organization chart. It won't let me click inside the rectangle. I converted it to an object that's uneditable, and this is what it's going to look like when somebody gets this document from the latest version of Word 2013. Of course, we converted it to the earlier version, and you can see up here on the title bar it's in compatibility mode, so that person in the earlier version of Word, be it 97, 2000, 2002, which was XP, or 2003. So they can look at it, which is nice. They can still see it, but they can't make any changes to it. They'd have to email us and say, hey, here's the changes I want you to apply to the organization chart, when it would have been easier for them if they had a later version that they can make the changes and just send it right back to us. Oh, and by the way, if you want to be able to see the two different versions from just looking at the file itself, let's go ahead and close out and go to my exercises folder on the desktop, because that's where I save the earlier version, a copy of the latest version, into the earlier version. And double click. And notice how the names are the same, and that's fine as long as the versions are different. And you can see just by looking at the extension here, .docx is the earlier version of Word as opposed to .docx with the extra X for Extensible Markup Language, the solid foundation for a more stable document. But if we tried to save this without converting it to an earlier version, it would overwrite if it had the same name of this document here. So you want to make sure, as you learned in the previous training video, when you want to make a copy of it, change the name if you're going to save it in the same folder. Or keep the same name and just save it outside the folder so it doesn't overwrite the original. That is, if you don't want to overwrite the original. Again, if you want to learn more about extensions, how to view the extensions within the operating system of Windows, then I recommend that you watch my Windows training video on extensions.